Have you ever heard of Tit Talk? No. I did not say TikTok. I said Tit Talk. You know, like booby talk, breast talk, breast, sine, piston. No, it doesn't ring a bell? It's okay. You know why? Because I have a very lovely guest with me who is going to inform us and educate us when it comes to nursing and breastfeeding. How wonderful is that? You do not want to miss this video. So Chelsea, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on here and dedicating your time to us and to the audience and kind of educating and informing us about this important topic. I want to give you the platform to introduce yourself and kind of tell us how all of this started for you.
How all this started. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you today. This all started maybe 8 or 9 years ago. I always knew that what I needed to do, my soul's purpose, was to do work that served other people. Mm-hmm. And I spent 5 or 6 years doing all of the wrong things for me, trying to find that job. And I got offered a lovely position. And one of the first things we had to do was become trained as certified lactation educators, because we were going to be in the home with new moms, supporting them. And I clearly recall sitting down at my desk the very first day on this new job and opening the textbook and going, oh, I don't want to do this job. I want to be a lactation consultant. So like immediately I knew why the universe had put me there. And it took another 5 or 6 years to complete that goal and be able to move specifically into this space. But I have been, we made it happen. So here we are, been trying to help boobs all over LA and the world for about.
That's wonderful. So you are helping boobs to do what exactly?
To lactate, yes. To be functional. I joke that I do boobs, but not like the fancy kind. I do the kind that have work to get done. So maybe not the kind of boobs we're used to doing in LA, but certainly important. My primary job is just to honestly fill in the gaps in support that new parents have. I know that most of us come from cultures where historically we've lived with our families. We've had our aunts and our sisters and our grandmothers and our cousins and everybody around to sort of help us figure out what we're doing, because while breastfeeding is a natural thing, it is also a right brain activity. It is something you learn by doing and seeing and experiencing, not so much by reading a book or taking a class prenatally, which is important, but also not quite the hands-on experience most people need. And the number one thing that shocks people is how different it is once the baby's actually there versus what we sort of envision it to be. I believe that there is perhaps too much romanticism around breastfeeding, that, you know, oh gosh, we're supposed to just love it and feel fulfilled and joy. And when in reality, you know, it's a huge disconnect between what you see pictures of and what they tell you is going to happen, and then what's really happening when your body's been essentially run over and you haven't slept in a week. And now you've got a little person who's chewing on your most sensitive parts. So I want to be able to infuse this conversation with maybe a little bit of levity and a little bit of silliness. And those of us who are in the depths of doing this work for our families, to have a space where we can come and say, this sucks, without someone just saying, well, give them a bottle, you know, where we can get some validation and be heard, because it's just like getting a PhD or running a marathon. It's going to be really hard to get to that end goal. And breastfeeding is really no different. It's for some, it comes extremely easily, not most.
Yes.
And so I think it's important to be honest about that, so that we don't have so many parents feeling like failures so soon into this experience.
I absolutely agree with you. I think that stigma out there as that you see it as a first-time mom, especially because you haven't had that experience. It's like you say, you have to practice, but this is one thing you can't practice until you become a mom. And then they hand you the baby. What was it?
you just get thrown in the deep end.
Exactly. They hand you the baby and they're like, okay, now you are going to be able to provide and feed them. And if you, and God forbid, if it takes 2 or 3 days for your milk to come, that means that you kind of starving your baby. So it's so much, first of all, pressure on the mom, and the unknown, you thrown into the dark, not knowing if they are sucking hard enough, and how deep should the boob be inside of the baby's
and
mouth.
how do we know we're getting enough? I think it's a multifaceted challenge, because we have so much misinformation about breastfeeding and the parent's diet and medications and newborn behavior and reasonable expectations. And then we add to that, OBGYNs, family practice doctors, pediatricians are not required to know any of this. So they don't know how this works. They don't trust that this works. And that filters down so that now mothers also don't trust that their bodies work. And we spend an entire pregnancy, which is essentially every prenatal appointment feels like a hunt for a problem. And then when the baby comes out, it's just hunting for more problems. And we've shut down this parental instinct. And I know that because you're a mental health specialist, expert, the thing about becoming a parent is really having to listen and learn to listen and learn to acknowledge and honor and trust your own instinct, which is the hardest part of it all. And knowing where to reach out, I think, is also is not always so obvious, right? Like, where do we go when we're feeling like maybe not so connected to our baby at 3 months old? Or where do we go when we can't stop crying? Or where do we go when we want to just get in the car and drive off? Or where do we go when our nipples are falling off and we think our baby's starving and everybody in the world is telling us that we should give up, right, Ayla? This is my middle daughter here.
Hi.
Oh, Romeo.
So can you tell me some of these myths that is associated with breastfeeding? Because I know in my household, I'm Iranian. I grew up in Iranian, and also I grew up in Sweden. So both of the household. But there are myths that are like, don't eat certain food, don't do certain things, because then the baby is going to be affected, and then they're going to have gas, and all the myths. What are these myths, and are they true?
Mostly no.
Okay, good to know.
I am, women all over the world, and even in different parts of, example, Iran or Sweden or Mexico, even just different cities, have vastly, dramatically different diets and different myths, and they all still breastfeed their babies. So the truth of the matter is, humans are extremely flexible and adaptive, and we can pretty much do as the Eskimos do and eat mostly animal fat, or go off into the Sahara and eat mostly grains, and babies still thrive. Human female bodies are spectacular in their ability to make do, right? Hello, moms, with what we've got at the table. And the big ones are, I think I hear a lot of spicy foods are going to make your milk spicier. It doesn't work that way. In a very short, quick, here's how it works. When you eat something, there's a digestive process. Okay. Your milk is made from what's in your blood. So anything that is going to get into your milk has to be small enough to be absorbed, essentially, from your intestines into your bloodstream. Flavors do, to some extent, but then the baby has to digest it too. So there's this double level of filtration. And as long as the milk is in your body, your liver is also still filtrating it. Or filtering it rather. So there's this constant process of removing the junk. You will get flavors. We know that in amniotic fluid and in human milk, the flavors are constantly changing. So children who are raised with a Persian diet or more Iranian diet are going to crave foods that are more similar to that which they're used to.
They're going to crave more kebabs.
I love it, okay? I'm fairly certain in a past life I must have been, because it's like my favorite thing. But there is the spices and the flavors and the types of food that children then gravitate towards tend to be very specific to the culture because they're used to it. And it's a good thing. It means they're usually more open to trying different things and tend not to be as picky eaters. It's not always the case. There's no hard and fast rules. There are too many variables to say, this is going to make this happen and this is going to make this not happen. It's entirely too muddy, right, for it to be that simple. So I know you asked a little bit about what those benefits of breastfeeding are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think there
But
are
before
any.
you go into the benefits, I want to talk about, now that you are on the flow of how it comes, how long does it take approximately for a mom from when the baby is handed over to her by the nurses until she has a full flow? How long should she expect? 2 weeks, 1 week, 1 day? And I know it's very different from mom to mom, but what is an average that they should be like, okay, I have time, I'm going to continue, I'm going to hold the fork down and continue?
We expect that there should be, if things are done correctly, and we can talk about what that looks like, there should be a shift by the second or third day of life, right? So that's not always the case. There are a lot of things that we do in Western medicine that during labor and birth that interfere with the hormonal shifts and the processes and the way things work. But barring all of that, even in those situations where you look at it on paper and you go, wow, this is going to be a train wreck, you know, a lot of those situations, there's really easy, quick things you can do the minute that baby is out or even before to make sure that things have a better chance of going really well. It is not such as, so if you are a mother who is at risk for having milk supply issues, or if, for example, in the past you've had a baby and you didn't see that shift, or there was an actual concern about milk supply, not just a baby who is fussy, because some babies just have opinions, right? So it was actually assessed that that was the issue. All three of mine. If they weren't so fat, I would think they were starving. You could have all of these little things. Maybe if you have diabetes during pregnancy or high blood pressure, hormonal conditions, if becoming pregnant or staying pregnant are an issue for you, that could potentially affect your milk supply. So if you are able to have a prenatal breastfeeding assessment, like a check-in with an IBCLC to say we take a full history so we know what your risk factors are. And when there are risk factors that are concerning to us, we can start hand expressing your colostrum at 37 weeks, assuming the doctor's given the okay. So we can start storing your milk in the freezer for if there's an issue.
Hold on, pause.
Yeah.
So you are saying I'm sorry. Okay, this is interesting. So you are saying while the mommy is still pregnant,
yes,
they can start pumping?
Not pumping. Pumping is very inefficient for removing colostrum. All it works on is suction, and colostrum is the texture of honey. But manually, it is pretty simple for most women to learn how to master the skill of hand expression. So you're not relying on a pump. You could do it for pumping.
With your hand, you're just trying to take this golden milk out.
Totally. And when we have situations where mothers know, for example, that they are definitely having a cesarean, that can increase, you know, it's a beautiful birth regardless, but it can increase the risk of baby having breathing difficulties or being in the NICU or transitioning not so well. It can also have the effect of sometimes delaying that transition to your mature milk. So if we know that that's something that's coming down the line, we can prepare. And at 37 weeks, women are considered full term. So most physicians will say, yeah, go ahead, nipple stimulation. If contractions start, we're already expecting it, right? So it's one of these things where there's all these ways that we can, because colostrum, the production of colostrum starts in the first trimester. So it's been in there since about 15 weeks of pregnancy.
Chelsea, is this something that, is it known? Like, is it something people talk about? Because this is the first time I ever heard about this. And mind you, when I went through my pregnancy, I was reading everything and I never heard of this. Where was it? Under a rock?
No, I think that there is, even within my own field, I feel like we have made the process so complicated that it is not realistic. And so my goal from my perspective is, how do we make this work for individual families? And this is just one of those creative moms doing what she can with what she's got situations where we're trying to find solutions, because they're very easy things that we can do to get things moving and sort of put us in the best position to see success. I know without a doubt the number one concern, because I have worked in the hospital setting for 8 years, and so hands down the biggest concern is making enough milk. We have heard from the doctors that we don't make enough milk. We have heard from our grandmothers they didn't make enough. Nobody in the world can make enough milk. Formula's only been around for about 100 years. Like, what were all these people? I mean, we survived until then. So, there's this disconnect of like what the human body actually can do, reasonable expectations of what babies should be doing, right? And then how do we get that milk supply up faster? So one of the things that we can do, even just practicing hand expression, even if your body is like, a lot of moms put progesterone as the hormone primarily responsible for saying, don't let the milk out, right? We're waiting for the baby to come out. When the placenta detaches, your progesterone levels tank. And that's sort of like the trigger. That plus the milk being removed and hopefully baby latching on or hand expressing, even on the operating table, if you've had a cesarean, in that first hour, those two things, that drop in progesterone and that beginning to remove the milk, can get your milk supply transitioned by the end of the first day. Oh, wow. It's quick. It can be very quick if we just set it up correctly. It's part of why a lot of hospitals all over the world have tried to move towards being what's called baby friendly. Designations aside, the whole point is get the baby close to mom quickly and start getting the milk out so we don't have that lag, right? Because that lag in that first few days, in that first week, is what is almost 100% responsible for moms not making enough milk. That first week is everything, right? So the goal is just trying to, like, the eye on the prize is getting as much milk out as possible, especially in the first 24 hours, but definitely in the first week. And then maintenance until they, wean and go off to college.
Okay, so for new moms out there, for moms that are expecting, let's say expecting moms out there, so what are the 2 things or 3 things they should kind of be how would I formulate this? What are the things they should take away from this? Is to by 36, you said they can start hand expressing.
37. So they changed a few years ago, maybe a little bit longer. 36 weeks is now no longer considered full term. 37 weeks is. So by 37 weeks, with permission from the doctor, assuming everything is healthy, even just to practice, the absolute best way to make sure that things go as well as possible is, if you can, in that first hour, immediately have that baby skin to skin and latching on. Gotcha. If the baby won't latch, can't be with you, it's just not feasible, then you want to get hands on the breast and start removing milk.
Okay.
Yes.
That's the ultimate one thing rule, that considering if they don't have any complications and anything, is to within the hour get the baby to latch, or if there are any complication within the 24-hour, get the baby to latch and suck as much as possible.
Yes, and if babies, a lot of so I don't think moms are ever to blame. I'm not even afraid of inverted nipples. None of these things scare me, because if a baby is doing well and has all of their function moving well, they could latch onto a brick wall and get milk out of it, right? So I've had accidental hickeys on the side of my arm because I didn't wake up fast enough and the baby just found their way. So babies are very adept, when they're able to be, at getting latched on. If latching isn't happening, it's usually the baby's fault. It's related to something going on with the baby, right? So you want to be keeping that child as much as possible mostly undressed, skin to skin, near the source of the food so that they're more motivated to keep trying. And also, especially for moms who've had either a lot of stitching, like physically traumatic delivery, who have had a C-section, like you're not going to be sitting up doing these fancy football holds with a boppy. You can't sit, right? So usually if a baby is in that face down position, they can latch on in that position without much help most of the time. But it really does require sort of someone to assess what's going on. So in the hospital, as quickly as possible, either get that baby latched on or start removing the milk within the first hour after delivery, if possible, and then ask to see the lactation consultant. Say, where is she? Bring her in, because we want to make sure that if there is funky stuff going on with the baby, birth is hard. I know that anybody who's been anything close to, I mean, it is, I don't care how that baby came out, that is a roller coaster ride, and it usually ends in the birthing person feeling like they got hit by a truck. Yes. So babies, we think, I mean, they can't really tell us, but we think they sort of have that same reaction. It's a really long, hard, difficult process. I highly recommend getting babies a chiropractic adjustment in the first week, particularly if it was either a really long, really difficult delivery, if there was a vacuum or forceps used, if babies got, if you can look at a baby and if they're kind of asymmetric, like their lips are going different ways or they've got that cone head still, they're very tiny and they're very flexible. And so all of that tension pulls on the neck and the shoulders and the jaw and the muscles that are required to breastfeed, right? And that's not mom's fault. That's not baby's fault. That's not anybody's fault. It's just how it is. Yeah. So making sure that we're keeping an eye on how baby is transitioning, their physical, but there's easy things to do. So if a chiropractor, there's in Los Angeles, are you kidding me? There's so many here who work on babies. They're not cracking them the way they crack us, but there's so many resources to sort of make sure.
This is news to me. I did not know that there is.
Oh, no, get that baby trusted.
This is so cool.
Totally. But these are fairly, and a lot of them will come to you. Like if you need them, I know my chiropractor came to me on day 4 after my last birth. So if you have a baby with a tongue tie or a lip tie, sometimes an adjustment will take care of it, and you don't need to go through the whole process of getting it revised. It's just a question of really keeping an eye on that kid and the situation, especially in those first few days, because the longer you go, the harder it is to kind of recover.
So now that we kind of know what to expect for the expecting moms, when should a person say, okay, this isn't working, and no shame, it's okay if you cannot do this, and there are other alternatives for you to feed your baby? When is it good time to kind of throw in the towels and say, this isn't it for me and I can't, or it's not coming, or the milk?
I tend to like to let the mom tell me, right? Things could be going great, but it's not the right thing for her. And we could be at 2 weeks and you got a fat baby and tons of milk, and she is just, I mean, maybe say 2 weeks is a little soon to throw in the towel, but say you get, to the end of that first 6 weeks that is so sacred in most communities, right?
Why is that? Why is the 6 weeks the number that is so sacred?
For 40 days in many cultures, right. So it's that 40-day period of lying in, letting your village take care of you, and it's sort of become like a put the baby on display and stay up all day and feed people coffee, which is not what it's supposed to be. So new moms, don't be afraid to tell everybody if they're coming over, it is to clean the bathroom and then they gotta bounce, right? Because it really is about practice, because this is a practice makes perfect situation. I think that there certainly have been times where I've had moms, I would have been one of them, just dead set. This is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. We are breastfeeding this baby. If we get to a point where we are not, even in the first few days, where we're not seeing the baby pooping and peeing well, we're not seeing the weight doing what it's supposed to be doing, we're not able to get the milk out. Not that that's the best in the breast. A good electric pump can remove maybe 50% of the milk that's in a breast from a mom who is very receptive. And in the first few days, it can't get anything because the texture of the milk and the way it's removed just don't connect, right? And there are women who make enough milk to feed the entire village who can't get anything out with the pump, right? So that's not a good indicator. Hand expression, it's a tip I think every new parent needs to know how to do because it's much more effective to remove milk. There are certainly moments where even I have had to go in and said, listen, we are throwing everything at the wall. We can keep trying some things. We'll keep working on stimulation. We'll keep checking in, keep coming to see me. And we can do that. But there does come a point where either the mom is saying this process of trying to make this work is too hard and no longer worth it for my emotional and mental health, or the professionals have to step in and just say it's not working, right? So no matter how you feed your baby, it is just love. The reason that we push human milk on human babies as hard as we do is because human babies are early in terms of development with respect to other mammals, right? Yeah. So we are not done developing. We call the first 3 months of life the fourth trimester. So it's not that the baby's out and they can have a steak or they can have some spaghetti. It's like the baby is out and they have not finished. So the mammaries take over the job the placenta has. So it's this finishing part, right? If it can't be done, that's okay. It's okay. I feel like there's more holding space for the mom in that situation than anything. But
because I think it's because so much pressure is so much pressure on that you have to provide for the newborn baby. Yeah. And that pressure can sometimes be one of the reasons.
It's overwhelming
that you might not be able to kind of produce or maybe even get the skills that you need to be able to do this because of that pressure.
Absolutely. Okay. I think there's a distinction to be made, which is that what most people look at as the signs that the baby is starving, honestly, 99% of the time is just not understanding newborn behavior and all of the excess noise from folks on the outside. Yeah. So, reach out to a board certified lactation consultant. I mean, we are all now on telehealth, so you don't even have to see us in person most of the time. You can call us, but reach out to me. I'm in Los Angeles. I will go anywhere you need me to go. I feel like there's a lot of us who are really dedicated to helping moms make this work. It's just one of these things that we have to prepare. So we prepare for the nursery, we prepare for the car seat, we prepare for all of these things, we prepare for the birth, but there's no real preparing for the after the fact. And taking a class is not going to, if we have a mom who's had, breast implants, does not mean you can't breastfeed your baby, but it would help me to know how the surgery was done, where the scars are, how long ago, what type of surgery it was, because then I can say, oh yeah, this is going to be fine, most likely, or say, we need to just keep a little closer eye. And here's 3 or 4 things we can do to just increase the odds, right? It's not as simple we're not all just like squatting in a field giving birth on the tree anymore. But even those who do, there can certainly be challenges. So reach out. There are international board certified lactation consultants all over the place. Most hospitals have them, should have them. It's a good question to ask when you're talking to your provider, your own doctor, or when you're interviewing pediatricians, if they have someone they work with or someone they recommend. And Instagram is full of everywhere.
Yes, absolutely. Which is great because it's so accessible to you, especially when you're up all night with the baby and you're scrolling through the Instagram. It's a great way to connect with a consultant who can actually help you. Let me ask you about this. Alcohol?
Yes.
Can new mommy, because I know I needed that glass of wine. What is it?
Have a drink. Good Lord. Absolutely.
Okay. So is it like dump and pump or whatever it's called, or no, you just keep it and
so what we recommend, so remember when we were talking a little bit earlier about how as long as the milk is in the breast, the mother's liver continues to filter it.
Yes.
Your milk is filtered at the same rate as your bloodstream, right? So the jokey joke is if you're safe to drive, you're safe to breastfeed.
Okay. That's a rule.
I always say that if you have a standard size like glass of wine, it can't be the glass that holds the entire bottles, lady. Okay, but like a standard size.
Got it.
My sister bought me that glass, and I was like, "Oh, this is a thing. I better be very clear about what I mean." So a standard size drink, a beer, a whatever 4-ounce glass of wine. We expect it to take about 2 hours to not really be in the system anymore. So the way I always started my celebratory drinks, because all my babies were born in the fall, so I could enjoy Thanksgiving and Hanukkah and New Year's and all the good stuff, was as your baby is falling asleep on the breast, you start the drink when they're basically done, and then that should give you a couple of hours. Because you will now have practiced hand expression 87,000 times, right? Because that's what we have to do. You can stick milk in the freezer for 6 months or longer.
Gotcha.
So if you need to have a little bit on the side, never a bad idea, but you do not need to then pump and dump, because if you do and then you breastfeed, the milk that's in there is still drunk. You haven't done much except remove most of it, right? But it's still in that state. So have a drink. I mean,
Mommy, just have your drink as soon as the baby fall asleep. Just have that glass and enjoy life, because you deserve it.
Yes, I think the thing to keep in mind, just so that everybody is on the up and up, because we're being real about breastfeeding and parenting here, that is the night that your baby will be up every hour on the hour just to spite you. So just heads up.
Absolutely. If anything, with anything else in motherhood, once you have a plan and you're going to do something, you have little ones who is going to be there and just laugh at you and not let you go on with your plan. So absolutely.
Yes. I hear they move out eventually, as I did, but I'm not sure I believe it. So we'll see.
How old are your kids, Stacey?
I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old.
Oh, your hands are full.
I've been breastfeeding straight for 8 years, a little over 8 years. Yeah, it's been
When
fun.
did you stop? So, okay, let's talk about this. Yes. When should someone stop breastfeeding?
When it is no longer something that the mother and baby mutually want to do. So the natural
if they're 5 is okay?
Yes, the natural age of, and I'll give you the science behind that. I'm a
5 years old is okay?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Okay, tell me the science. I want to hear this.
For me, it might not be okay for all moms. So what's okay for one is not going to work for everybody.
Sure.
The natural age of human weaning is around between 2 and 7 years of age. The reason is that's about the time that the human immune system is done developing and becomes autonomous. So every baby's going to be different. For some kids, it'll be like 2 on the nose. For some kids, it'll be like 6. That's okay. I didn't realize I had a limit, but I did. When my oldest turned 4, I was like, you need to go have some tequila and leave mommy alone. But I had a newborn at the time, so it's not like I got a break, right? So every family is going to have their own feelings about it. When babies are infants, especially in that first 6 months, we do not restrict feeding. You do not restrict feeding. That kid has free access to the boob as much as they need, right?
Okay.
I always, around that 6 to 7 months, start to feel like, let's teach boundaries, right? Okay. So it's my own sense of like, okay, now I don't have to take you to pee with me latched on. You can hold on a second. I'm going to stand right there. I'm going to be in there. I'm going to place you where you can see me. You're going to be also teaching them that they are safe in other ways, not just on the breast. Not that that is a problem. It is a thing that you're supposed to use for comfort. Giving our children comfort, it gets a bad rap, but why should it? If my husband didn't give me comfort, I'd divorce him. Yeah. It's a normal part of a healthy relationship. So I do now with my 2-year-old, there are boundaries. When mommy has had enough, mommy says mommy has had enough, find something else to do. But in the first 6 months, we do not, since it's the only thing they should be eating, we don't recommend it. There are going to be different comfort levels, even in the same family, just with different children, right? So what I was comfortable doing with my first, I don't know that I'm gonna make it to 4 years with this last one. He'd probably go till he was 12, but I think at some point I'm feeling more like, all right, I'd like a second. This is like,
I need a break.
It's 10 years, guys, but kids are tired. So it's just the sussing out what works for each family and making sure that we're honoring both parts of this team, right? Because it's not just the baby's needs, it's not just the mom's needs, it's what everybody, it's being a mom, right? It's like figuring out what's going to be in the best interest of this dyad so that everybody can be their best and function and be happy and thrive as much as we can make that happen. So
Absolutely.
it depends on the family. I have to say that almost no one admits it except to me because I'm the boob lady. Most women who have breastfed to the first year have breastfed beyond the first year. And more women than you can imagine are still breastfeeding 5-year-olds. But they don't need to nurse all day long. Right? So it might
They
just be
nurse. For me, I cannot fathom. For me, not that I want to judge. I think, like you said, absolutely. If it's working for you, it's working for your family. By all means, do that. But for me, when would that? Is it like when they're gonna fall asleep, or is it like a snack?
Yeah. Sometimes it's falling asleep. Sometimes it's big transitions. So I'm sure you know, with children even on their way to, starting school or moving or getting sick or teething or getting a new sibling. So it can be helpful in those transitions. I am not a particularly, parenting didn't come naturally to me, like being gentle and loving. And I didn't have that immediate burst of love. I had a lot of challenges with my births and a lot of depression, not as much with the last two, but the first especially, I struggled a lot. And so for me, it was literally the way I knew to parent him because he needed so much from me and I just didn't know what to do, what to give, I didn't even like him until he was 6 months. At that point, I was like, okay, the depression is lifted. I've gone back to work. I can breathe. I can, and then I really started to develop that bond. But I also think that that's more common than we are allowed to discuss because there's the stigma of not feeling that immediate love for, I loved him, I wanted to keep him alive, but for a long time, the only way I knew how to care for him was to use that as a tool. It just so happened that he was a kid who was happy to do that till he was 4. Oh. Not all babies are, some kids, if they hit, a lot of us do believe that babies, children who are weaning on their own, especially in the first year, that is not normal weaning. That is premature in terms of development and their needs. It's not something that out in the wild and natural human behavior you would expect to see. So a lot of that has to do with how the milk supply got established, how parenting has worked or not worked, or what a lot of little bits and pieces that go into whether a baby still even wants the breast at 8 or 9 months or a year. But certainly if they're done it like 1.5, 2, that might have just been their timeline. And I may not have known what to do with that kid if he decided at 1.5 that he didn't need the boob anymore. I'd be like, I don't know, what do you want? So it was a huge help for me as a first-time mom who did not know how to parent. I didn't know how to connect with him. I'm still working on it. It's a work in progress. So I do think that it's okay to use that. It's not a crutch. It's not a Band-Aid. It's a tool that exists for that purpose, right? It's for those of us who struggle, but doesn't mean we all have to breastfeed till they move out. I like to make that joke just to freak out the mothers-in-law a little bit. Like, when I'm walking down the aisle, I guess I'll take the boob away. Just for the fun. No one's doing that, FYI. Babies, so just as a fun tidbit that you guys can all throw out at your next dinner party, the top and bottom jaw are not connected until roughly 6 months or so after the baby stops breastfeeding. But on its own, it will fuse somewhere after the 5-year mark. So children cannot breastfeed forever because eventually, whether they stop on their own or not, those two things will fuse, and then the lower jaw is no longer able to do this. It just starts doing this.
Gotcha. Right? We can't.
So they go on forever, I promise.
Yes. Makes sense.
Yeah. Mechanic.
Well, thank God for that mechanic, because God knows when they would stop. You would see teenager baby.
So a couple grown-ups might still be on the board.
So we're coming to an end, and I want viewers to kind of get a feel of what is it that you are providing with on social media, and how can people get in touch with you?
Sure.
What is it that you want kind of people to take away from our conversation?
our conversation. So first and foremost, this is a hard thing to do. It is 100% worth it, just like everything else that is hard to do. And you're not alone. You are absolutely not alone. I would avoid Dr. Google because he doesn't have any boobs, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't know what he's talking about. But you can reach out to me. I'm happy to leave my information. We're at orobaby.com. It's my own curated lactation. I'm the one you'll see. I'm the one who will walk you through the process. If it takes 2 years, we'll deal with all the questions and concerns. We're on Instagram, of course, at myorobaby, so you can find me there as well. I'm hoping that for those who maybe don't have the resources or don't necessarily feel like they need that level, I have a Tit Talk series on YouTube, which is at the Orobaby YouTube channel. It was TikTok did not exist when I created this idea, so it is Tit Talk, y'all.
Yeah.
Like a TED Talk, but about the boobs. The hope being that we can give you some really quick, like 5 minutes tops. I never had time to sit there and spend 45 minutes watching a video while my kids screamed at me. So the hope is to get some like really clear, really fast, really fun, kind of tongue-in-cheek information to you quickly. Demystify this process. It is not that complicated. It is that complicated, but it doesn't need to be that complicated. And so I am always available. You can schedule an appointment to meet with me in person if you're in LA, or over virtually if that makes everybody more comfortable in the time of COVID. But either way, sometimes hands-on is not, it's not, you have to sometimes, especially with babies. So I'm around. I think the takeaway is just that you're not alone. And that if you don't know, or if your mama gut instinct, like if you hear an answer and it makes your tummy go, ugh, listen to that, right?
Okay.
If pediatricians knew anything about boobs, I wouldn't have a job. So please feel free to use me. Or my colleagues. I mean, it's sometimes the most important thing is finding someone you connect with. So it's not always me or, XYZ. It's sometimes not even the credentials that matter. It's just finding someone that you feel a connection with and that you feel is going to take you seriously and love you up, because that's what you deserve as a new parent.
Absolutely. The support. Absolutely. So I wish I had found you when I was going through the struggles of breastfeeding and juggling twins and all of the things. But absolutely, I think it's great for moms to know that they're not alone. It is not easy, but doable as a tool, as a crutch to get you through this hump. And you can find, I'm actually going to link everything below here, so it's going to be easier for you guys to connect with her. So much. It's been so informative. I am shocked by all the things that I've learned in this short period of time. And I hope
now it's time to have some tequila and celebrate the boobs.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to come on Tit Talk again and talk more about tits. To all the viewers, thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions, any concern, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and know that you're not alone and we are here to help you. Until next time, stay safe and stay kind. Mwah.